Hi, everyone, and welcome to our collective experiences. I'm Sean, your host, and today we have the wonderful Dave Sledge, who's the host of our Sliver of Time on YouTube. Dave, nice to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And how are you doing this evening?
Thanks for coming on the show. I'm actually really excited to talk to you about your NDE and your OBE. And I'm doing good. I'm excited to have our chat. So I would love if you would be able to walk us through your NDE that you had when you were 8 years old.
When I was about 8 years old, I was sleeping over one of my aunt's houses. My parents must have been out. I don't know if it was a date night or a party, whatever. They were young. I was even younger. Um, and I was sleeping over a family member's house. And at about maybe midnight, I started having asthma problems. And I wasn't really sure why at the time. We figured out why it was after. Turns out I am severely allergic to cats, and she has a cat, like a long-haired gray cat, and I was cuddling with this cat all night long. And it's kind of funny because usually, cats are like vicious, right? They're just gonna scratch your ankles and, kind of attack you. This cat was super chill, super mellow. I was using this cat as a pillow for hours, having no idea what it was doing to my lungs. And I start using my inhaler more and more. Hours and hours go by. So my aunt and my uncle were asleep at the time. It must have gotten to at least like 3 in the morning. I used my inhaler maybe like over 100 times. I drained the whole inhaler. And by that point, it really wasn't working anymore. It was kind of every 30 seconds trying to take a puff. Starting to panic, of course. And when I finally ran completely out of medicine, that was basically the only point that I was like, okay, I have to wake up my aunt. And that's pretty much why I didn't tell her that there was a problem in the first place. I just felt so bad. I really didn't want to wake her up. And by the time I run out of medicine and decide to like tiptoe into her room and wake her up and say, hey, I'm having, asthma problems, I was actually already dying at that point. Because it all happened very shortly after, like 2 or 3 minutes later. Um, so she gets up, she jumps into action. We hop in her car. I don't even remember getting in her car. It kind of cuts. My memory kind of cuts to being inside of her car. And my grandfather has asthma as well. Now he lives right up the road. He lives like 5 minutes up the road. So I guess we were going to try to go to my grandparents' house and use their inhaler. And I just remember being in the car with my head kind of leaning on the window at the time. Apparently, what happened is we made it there. I don't remember making it there. My brain was like literally shutting down in the car. Um, but apparently, the story goes we did make it there, and I tried to take a puff of his inhaler, and I fell straight on my back, luckily into the grass. He had a grass front lawn. Um, and at that point, that's when they called an ambulance. And I don't remember being in the ambulance. I don't even remember making it to my grandparents' house. Um, so, what I remember, as far as what I saw on the other side, was pretty brief, to be honest. Obviously, it's had like a significant impact in my life. My memory serves me as this. I was in the car and obviously suffering, right? Because when you can't breathe to that degree, I mean, you have to understand, this was like easily the scariest thing that I've ever experienced in my life. When you can't breathe to that severe of a degree, the best way I could describe it is it's like being trapped in your own body. Like there's literally nowhere to go. It's not really something I wish upon anyone. But it is what it is. It's been a long time. I've gotten past it. So my memory of the other side is I go from being in the car and all of a sudden I was surrounded by darkness but it wasn't like a scary darkness. It was kind of neutral. It was kind of like space or something like this, where it's not good, it's not bad, it's just dark. And I see a light off in the distance, and I felt as though it was coming in my direction, but in hindsight, I feel like I was going towards it, or there was like some sort of magnetic pole or something like this. And it's getting bigger and bigger until the only darkness I could see is really in my peripherals. And at that point, it started to be accompanied by a sound, which was basically music. It was like a choir. I always refer to it as like a choir. It was these two notes that I'm not going to try to recreate. One was higher than the other. It was beautiful. It was beautiful notes. And just like that, I woke up in the hospital. Couldn't feel my body at all. Um, the whole hospital trip was kind of a blur. I really don't remember much of being in the hospital, but what I was told was that when I finally came to at a point where they were trying to figure out my cognitive state, because my heart was shut down for such a long time and my brain was had been shut down for X amount of time. When I finally came to, because I wasn't supposed to survive, they told my mother to say goodbye to me literally. And I feel bad even saying that on these shows because I know it's very personal, especially for her. I don't know how she feels when she hears this stuff, but we're adults. We've talked about this many times. Um, they told her to say goodbye to me, and then I somehow miraculously woke up. I don't know how I was resuscitated. I've always wanted to go and like thank the doctors personally, and to be honest, I always regret that. I've never seeked them out. I don't know how to find them, and really I could have probably tried harder, but it just hasn't happened. But so they're trying to figure out my cognitive state, and so they're asking me, "Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What's your birthday?" And apparently they asked me how I got to the hospital. And I told them that my mother carried me in her arms and walked me all the way to the hospital, which is ridiculous. So that's always kind of like the best part of the story. Um, and yeah, that's my very brief kind of experience on the other side, at least as far as the near death experience. And it certainly led me down a certain path. I'm not saying good or bad, but it definitely shaped the way that I think as a whole. It's definitely provided like the foundation for my entire mental frame. I try to contemplate what is consciousness every single day. To be honest, after this experience, even when I was only 10 years old, because of this experience, I actually was so convinced that I was going to die early. Not to sound like negative, but that's what it is. I never thought that I would see the age of 20. And even by the time I turned 20, I was like, well, I don't know how I did that, but I probably won't see 30. And now that I'm 30 now, I'm like, okay, we might be in it for the long run. So now I'm like excited, and it's kind of a give and take, because I've done some damage to my body with, the smoking and stuff like this. Um, but yes, apparently we're still here and I couldn't be more thankful. So
That's funny you said that because I literally wrote down the right before you said that I went thankful for every day with a question mark. Um, do you find after I know for myself, I have asthma too, and I've had asthma attacks. It's super terrifying. When I was doing my paramedic, when people have those attacks, because like you're breathing and it feels like you're trying to breathe through it like almost like a straw, and it's actually you can't get it feels like you can't get any air in. But with the actual way with that asthma works is that it's not that you can't breathe in, it's actually that you can't breathe out, and that's why we end up coughing. We could breathe in, but our lungs are full with like the carbon dioxide, and it's a horrible feeling. I really liked how you described that feeling trapped in your body because I totally resonate with that. um,
yeah.
it's a terrifying experience not being able to breathe, and it's almost like drowning, but you're surrounded by air.
Yeah, you're like drowning in the air. It's interesting that you bring that up because I did hear recently, I don't know how true this is, but I heard like if you hold your breath for a long time, the reason that it becomes, that kind of pain, that like unbearable part of not taking a breath, apparently is not because of the lack of oxygen. It apparently is because of the carbon dioxide not being released. I don't know how true this is, but that's what I heard.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, that's what I learned when I was a paramedic. Yeah, yeah, it starts kicking in where it's almost like COPD, where instead of normally you're breathing because of the levels of carbon dioxide, and with COPD it's reversed. It's the levels of oxygen. Yeah, very interesting. Uh, so I was super curious if you could describe the light to me, because I've seen it, I like mine too, and so I always have like something circular around. Like I notice like my logo kind of looks like this, and then I have pictures of my partner and I's eyes and stuff. And I've been noticing that there seems to be a theme that I didn't really realize until like lately. So I was wondering if you could describe that light. Mine was like torn on the edges and stuff. Was yours a solid light? Did it look like a headlight? How was what did the light look like?
For me, for me, the light was entirely white. I understand that some people say, maybe they started seeing all of these other colors that we don't have here. My theory is that because I came so close to this light, but I didn't go inside of it, that maybe that's why I saw it as literally black and white.
Hmm.
It was seemingly a perfect circle, but it's not like I recall like super sharp edges. It could have been kind of blurred edges. I don't know, but I know that the overall shape seemed to be a sphere. Um, and yeah, for me, it was literally black and white, but I believe that's because I was kind of like outside looking in. I feel as though I got as close to this thing as I possibly could without going inside of it. That's exactly what I think happened.
That totally makes sense to me, because as you were describing, I was picturing my own NDE, and that being in that dark void, and how, like, for myself, I don't know if this is how it feels to you, but it almost felt like an immense, like, infinite amount of nothingness. Does that, if that makes sense? And it's complete darkness and stuff. But there was, I felt a presence. Um, I'm not sure if you did. And then I love your idea of that maybe you didn't transition past that threshold. And so you got the experience you needed to, but you didn't quite, you didn't transition past that threshold, almost like a portal. And that's what I remember for my own, is when I went past that threshold, that's when I went to that meadow. And I find it interesting you came that close and then got pulled away.
Yeah, it is. It was certainly enough to, leave me more curious than you could possibly believe. Um, yeah, I've spent pretty much my whole life trying to figure out, what happens when you go inside of this light, what comes after that. It is interesting in hindsight, and I've never really thought about it too deeply until, well, actually that's a lie. Let me rephrase that. Um, it is interesting because I had no physical sensation because I didn't have a body, but my hearing was clearly working. I heard the music, my vision was working. I had no eyes, but I could see whatever it was that was in front of me. It's almost as if I had all of my senses except for physical feeling, which is pretty bizarre.
Interesting. Did you feel any presences around you?
Um, no, I didn't feel a presence. The light was the only presence, and I don't know if I felt as though it was alive or something at the time. I can't say for sure. It didn't feel like there was a presence, but when the music was playing, maybe it's like, well, it has to be coming from somewhere. But that was like right at the end.
Yeah, it's interesting that we both had music, and it felt it feels significant too. Have you ever heard anything like it, like quite like it, since your transition back, since you were 10, or have you never been able to quite find something that matches?
So I haven't found an exact match, but as you asked that question, immediately a couple songs that I'm not going to name the songs, but Yeah, I think I've heard similar. I've heard similar things here. I haven't heard the
Yeah.
exact same notes, but I've heard things that are pretty similar, which is interesting. You know, some people say that what we have here is what exists on the other side. We have similar music. I mean, it's almost like, are we subconsciously creating things here that exist on the other side? I have no idea.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's very fascinating. Um, that music seems to play a role in near-death experiences because there's quite a few accounts of it, and I find it fascinating why that one might be, and why they seem so unique too. Uh, yeah, I find it fascinating. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on how you think you would die early. Do you think that was like a form of survivor's guilt?
No, I think because I was like a pretty unhealthy child. You know, I had a lot of asthma attacks before this one. Obviously, none that were as severe as this one, but I did have a few severe ones that, you know, we caught it way earlier that it didn't get to this point. Between the asthma, I even had a problem with my leg. I had a hairline fracture in my thigh, and they didn't know what it was for years. So they thought it was cancer. They thought it was all these crazy things. I went through like crazy painful tests for the leg thing. Just my overall health when I was younger was really bad. So I was always kind of like the sick kid. And then after coming that close to death, after already being kind of like the sick kid, um, a combination of it both is why I was pretty convinced that I wasn't going to live that long. Um, I'd say that's the reason.
Hmm. Hmm. And when did you find that you started to switch from you didn't think you were going to survive and and you mentioned how you're thankful now. When do you think that transition happened?
Well, I was always thankful. You know, for the record, I was always thankful because the way that I've lived my life since then is that I am so innately aware that all of my time on this planet is extra time that it's actually it's kind of bugged out if you think about it. Obviously, I've made peace with it and I'm extremely thankful and I always have been. As far as like when did I realize that I was probably in this for the long run, right? That I might actually make it to 60. Um, Pretty much very recently, actually. I would say as I was approaching my 30s, I was like, well, I'm still here. So, you know, I think maybe within the past couple of years.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. It's been fun to get to know you.
Hell yeah, bro.
Uh, so I'd love if we could talk about your out of body experience because that's happened more recently, and I'd love if you could tell us about that experience because OBEs I find very fascinating.
Um, Absolutely. So, about 7 months ago, I had an out of body experience completely out of nowhere. And what happened was this. I'll give you a little bit of a premise because it actually plays a key role into why I believe that I left my body. I have a theory on exactly how this happened, so I'll tell you after. Um,
Perfect.
the premise is this. Someone tried to break into my apartment like 2 years ago, and ever since that happened, when I hear someone open the hallway door at nighttime, I listen very intensely to make sure that I know I can hear them go into another apartment just in case. So what happened was I was going to sleep. I had just laid down. Maybe 5 minutes goes by. I'm in like I'm in this in between state of consciousness where I don't realize I'm falling asleep already. I was in the conditions were just right. I don't know if this was a coincidence or if this was divine timing, but I think this one might have been a coincidence. I'm not sure. The conditions were just right. I could not have planned this out if I tried. I was in that vulnerable state of halfway conscious and halfway not conscious when that hallway door opens. Now it's a sticky door, so when it opens, it pops. It's like a loud sticky door. And when that hallway door opened, I shot up faster than I ever have in my life. I was stricken with fear. I can't even explain the severity of the fear. It was my entire body was shaking. It was like survival. It was like, not that I thought I was going to die, but it shocked my entire system. And I believe the reason it did was because I was in that vulnerable state at the perfect moment. So I'm listening to who's out in the hallway. And once I hear a woman's voice, I say, okay, that's my neighbor. The second I knew that it was my neighbor, I started laying back down. The fear washed away. I mean, this was like a physical sensation. And I started laying back down. And that's when I realized that I had left my body because I go into a laying down position, but I'm still 3 feet above my bed. I literally thought to myself, like, oh my God, I'm out of my body. And the second I thought that, I started descending. I had no control over the descent at all. And it was extremely slow. It was the slowest descent ever. It took God, from front to back, this descent of like 3 feet probably took like 15 seconds. It was incredible. It was notably peaceful and it was incredible. When I got about halfway down, my consciousness started to feel like it was fading out of existence to the point where I had a conscious thought during this and I asked myself, is this what it feels like to die? And for some reason, I was okay with this. Not that I wanted to die, but it was just extremely bizarre. I didn't know if I was actually dying. I didn't know if I was correct about being outside of my body. I had no idea. But my consciousness fizzled out like a light bulb, one of those where you could like switch the dimmer. It just
Yeah.
dimmed out to absolute nothing. And the second it got to nothing and my back hit the bed, that's when I woke up in real life. And the first thing, I mean, I was in shock. Like when I opened my eyes must have been like wider than they ever have before. This was like mind blowing to me. And I could still hear my neighbor outside. She was locking her door from the inside. So everything that actually happened out there really happened, but I never physically moved. My body had never even, I was sleeping on my side. I wasn't even on my back. I had never moved. And it had been 5 minutes. If you would like, I'll share my theory about why I
Of course.
believe this happened.
Of course. Yes, please.
Okay. I get so amped up telling this story because this one is just like I couldn't even sleep that night. Um, so I immediately I immediately start to try to sit there and figure out how exactly did this happen. I spent like 2 hours trying to figure out how this happened. And the only logical conclusion I can come to is this. I believe that in that vulnerable state of halfway conscious and halfway not conscious, that I was shocked to such a severe degree that I think my consciousness was tricked into leaving my body. I think that my consciousness was literally tricked into thinking that it was time to go. That is my only explanation that I have to this day. So is it correct? I'm not sure. That's the only answer I have.
I would 100% agree with you actually. So that state where you're super vulnerable is actually called the hypnagogic state.
Okay.
I don't know if you've looked into have you looked into the Monroe Institute and stuff? So Robert Monroe.
I've heard of the name. I've never heard of the hypno, whatever that state's
Hypnagogic?
called. It's the
Yeah,
first
the
time I'm
hypno
hearing of this state.
Yeah, so there's the hypnagogic state, and that's for when you're just falling asleep. And so the state is where it's where your body is asleep, but your consciousness is still awake. And then in this state, you become extremely vulnerable, just like you said. And yeah, I think you're 100% right that because you had already had a previous trigger, that probably um, allowed you to it literally scared you to death. Your spirit left and your body was like, whoa buddy, like I'm not dead.
Yeah,
Just a door
because
slam.
because the second that I realized there was no danger, I had
It
no
went,
control over it. I started going back into my body.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly and you'll find if you start looking into Robert Monroe, who's like the OG, the out of body experience. So I'll give some backstory, not just for you, but like for the audience. So just in case they're not aware, but the Robert Monroe back in the 60s or 50s, I'm not very good with dates. Started having a spontaneous. He had a spontaneous out of body experience, very similar to yours actually, and he ended up against the ceiling and he was staring at the ceiling. And that seems to be for a lot of people when they have these out of body experiences, they'll randomly just be up and not realize that they're outside of their body. And what Robert Monroe started doing was exploring and figuring out if he could uh, recreate that sort of situation where where he'd be able to recreate this out of body experience. And so he spent many years using exploring this, and he ended up coming up with a sound technology that's binaural beats.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to that. So what it's doing is it's called hemisync. So it's synchronizing your left and your right hemispheres, and when that happens, um, it creates a resonance in your mind and also with your body, and that enhances. It's an easier way for you to get out of your body. So like for myself, um like when I was on your show, we were talking about raw, my experience with raw, and how I got a list of how I'm supposed to do out of body experiences. So I've been trying. I've only had like one. Well, I've had two. I had my one with my NDE, which was a traumatic out of body experience. And then I've had another experience with DMT where I had an out of body experience. Um, and that one was super scary. But
Yeah,
uh,
the first thing I thought of, well, not the first thing. The first thing I thought of was how did this happen? And the second thing was, can this be recreated?
yeah,
And I do think it could be recreated, but the tricky part is like if I know it's coming, that's going to factor into the shock value. And I'm sure there's other ways to do it as well. Like the one you just described is probably way more efficient, than trying to scare yourself out of your body.
yeah, yeah, a lot less traumatic. So what a lot of people do is they use the old technology was is called the gateway experience, and this is also the CIA and some of the other three-letter organizations. They helped fund Robert Monroe in developing this sound technology and this out of body experiences because they realize that it's kind of closely tied to remote viewing as well. And so now they have some new technology. It's a little bit easier to listen to, but there's tons of ways apparently. And as I get better at this, maybe we can always have another chats as we start figuring out how to do this. But
Oh, yeah.
there's other ways where you can start having controlled out of body experiences, and a lot of it has to do with mindfulness and just practice. So that yeah, that's super fascinating. I love that you had that experience. And now, do you feel like now that you've had this experience, do you feel like you're almost it's almost like you're chasing it now? You want to have like another that sort of thing?
I would absolutely be willing to have another out of body experience. I mean, it was one of the coolest things. I know look, I joke around about being a professional. I'm just going to straight up tell you, this was the coolest thing that I've ever done. And obviously I had no control over it, but yeah, I think if there was a way to have another out of body experience, I would sign up for it any day of the week, without a doubt.
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, that's really awesome. I can hardly wait till you do have one because I know you will, for sure. You'll definitely figure it out. I have a friend that's really into this stuff, and he was saying because I've been trying and I've been trying, and I think I've narrowed it down to the reason I can't is that because mine was so traumatic. Um, my out of body experience from my NDE that it's like my body is holding me back, and it's like no, no, fuck you, man, you're not leaving me again, kind of thing. And I wonder because wonder if you have do you feel like there's a block from you recreating this right now, or do you feel like Uh, Maybe you just need more practice. What do you think?
Well, if I'm being 100% honest, I haven't tried yet since it
Hmm.
happened. To be honest, after this happened, I sat on it for a while. I told basically everyone I know, just the main people like that I speak with. And that was pretty much a catalyst, if you will. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly. That was basically
I
part
think you
two
are.
of the reason that I'm even here today. So the reason I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is talking with people like yourself and meeting with all of you amazing people and talking about this experience that we share. Um, the reason I'm doing this is not only because of my near death experience, but that out of body experience, you have to understand like when I had that, okay, I'm getting tripped up because this is so exciting. You have to understand like when when I had that near death experience when I was a child, the the amount of curiosity of the nature of reality, what is consciousness, what is baseline reality, what does this bedroom even really look like, because we see less than 1% of the light spectrum, etc. This is all I think about. So like when I had this out of body experience, it was the last straw. I literally was like, that's it. I'm gonna talk to these other people. And that was really what kind of planted that final seed to ultimately be talking with you today and everything else that we're doing. So I haven't tried. I've been so busy just doing these conversations, it hasn't even crossed my mind for a while, to be honest.
No, I love that. The catalyst, yeah. I think about that a lot. The catalyst that there's been certain. It's almost like a trigger, and or an activation maybe about that some one experience or a couple experiences has um, awakened. Yeah, like you said, awakened that curiosity. Uh, and for you're right. It almost becomes an obsession about exploring what exactly is consciousness. And before my experiences, I don't know about you, because you were so young, but I wasn't really that interested. I was like a little interested in UFOs and stuff, but not really. I was not really interested in like consciousness or anything like that. Um, do you think it's before your NDE, even though you were fairly young? Do you remember thinking about these sort of things, or was it like almost immediately after your NDE that you started thinking about consciousness and reality and everything?
You know, there is one moment that I believe is the first there's one moment where I believe was the first time that I ever questioned reality. And to be honest, I don't remember if it must have been after, to be honest. I must have been a couple years after this. And it was actually, I was hanging out with a bunch of friends, and there was two people walking on the main road, maybe 200, 300 feet out, and one of them was dribbling a basketball. And I'll never forget this. This was the first time I questioned reality as a whole. I was like captivated by this. They were dribbling a basketball, but because there was so much distance between us, I could watch the basketball hit the ground, and the sound wasn't hitting my ears until it was bounced almost all the way back up to their hand. And the first time I noticed it, I like took a double take and I just watched this guy dribble the basketball all the way up the road. And that was like the first time that I was like, wait a minute, the sound doesn't hit my ears at the time that and that was it. That was like the first time I really kind of started diving into that.
What's your uh, what's your leading theory on what our reality is right now? Because I know mine's changed over the years, so I'd be curious where you're sitting right now versus where you were before.
So, do you mean in terms of like what is consciousness or what is reality? Because reality, I
We
mean,
can,
that's a lot of things. I don't know how all the stars got here. I have a couple theories on consciousness.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, well, we can start with let's start with consciousness. Yeah, tell me
Okay,
your
so
views on consciousness. I'd love to hear them.
okay, so keep in mind I'm not tied to a particular belief system. I kind of have this like tree of ideas, and sometimes branches get cut off, sometimes more branches get added to it. But what I believe as of right now is this. I believe potentially that consciousness could be like tethered to the brain in some way. Well, it's a tie between two things. Either it's a field of consciousness in which everything that is born into it is bound to be conscious by default, or is consciousness tethered to the brain, therefore it's like you're taking that consciousness and putting it into a limited form. Our entire existence appears to be based on limitation. We have limited eyesight, we have limited hearing, and then if you look across all the species, they see things we don't, they hear things we don't. If you like, it seems to all be based on limitation. So I think really that's where I lean towards the most. Maybe we're coming here and purposely limiting ourselves to experience this. Now, is there one consciousness or is it multiple souls? That's where it becomes really tricky because there could be one grand consciousness that splits itself into billions, or well, people say billions, that's only human beings. The way I see it is this: every single human body has trillions of organisms living on your skin right now. Think about all the dogs and cats and birds and fish and insects. Think about, and that's only today, right now, this second. Picture every single living organism that has ever lived on this planet, ever. And then understand that's only planet Earth. So this is far more than 8 billion. Is it all coming from one consciousness? I have no idea. That's a lot of souls, though. And it seems as though maybe it's wishful thinking, but it seems a little bit unlikely that all of these souls are just hanging around to have one lifetime. Eternity goes by, you have one lifetime, and then eternity goes by. That's all you get. There's some species on this planet today that live for 35 minutes. It just seems a little bit unlikely. So I don't know. It's wishful thinking, but that's basically my theory as of right now.
Yeah, it's pretty close to where I said it's like that fractal universe kind of thing, where there's like a super consciousness, and then we're all um, I'm like a fractal of that super consciousness. It's kind of interesting, yeah. Like you could go. It seems like you could get lost in the philosophy, as what Marcus Aurelius always said.
It's like skateboarding. It's never ending. There's no such thing as learning every trick. Every trick doesn't exist. It's unlimited. I feel like with reality, it seems to be unlimited. There's how can we possibly know it all, right? So there's always, no matter how much you learn, there's always more. So it's kind of, yeah, it's unlimited, seemingly.
And that might be maybe that's the point, is the it's like that quantum field, because you're mentioning this field, and it made me think about the quantum field, and that there's like you say, endless possibilities, and it's only once we direct our attention to it does that field start to collapse into that particular reality. I really loved your idea. I loved when you were mentioning about limitations, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately. But I've been thinking of it as like a filter. But I can see the parallel between what we were both thinking here, which is that yeah, there's a limitation to our perception, and that we seem to be going through this. I don't know if this makes sense to you, but going through this evolution almost, and where we're starting to have less and less limitations, or maybe less filters, and maybe that's why we're being able to see and like have higher intuition. um I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. So I feel like it's only natural. Keep in mind, I don't think there will ever really be a point where human beings have zero limitations, because you have to understand, if you take one single sense, if you could see 100% of the light spectrum, I'm not even convinced you would be able to function. I think there is a point where if we don't have enough limitations, how are you going to decipher the physical matter in front of you if you see literally everything? Now, are we potentially are we potentially being liberated of some of these limitations? I feel like quite possibly. I feel as though it's only natural. We seem to be just intelligent enough to like clearly be able to contemplate some of this stuff to the degree that we have. Then you factor in the technology, there's cameras that can see what we can't. So now we have an awareness of what other things look like, even though, right? So I think I think there's room for some of these limitations to be lifted, but if you're talking 100%, I don't know if you'd be able to function physically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you bring up a good point, actually. Yeah. Um, and this, I don't know. Do you think about manifestations?
I don't think about it often, but I feel like you get what you put out into the world, you know, to a degree out of, you know, things are going to come your way that you can't expect in both good and bad ways. But, you know, as far as manifestation, I really believe that it really comes down to the effort that you put into things, you know. Like
Hmm.
I can't just sit here and manifest a house. I need to also be like
Not yet.
there needs to be that exchange of like discipline and all these other things that I just don't have, right? So I'm going to be sitting here in this apartment until I could actually be responsible enough to then manifest it. So is it manifestation? Well, maybe the initial thought, but like what was the follow through? The follow through is everything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why I was wondering if you were going to go there. Because it feels like manifestations are starting to speed up a little bit, and that it's almost like uh, we don't have as many breaks holding us back. But it's kind of like a fail safe for humanity that we have, like that you said about this responsibility, that if you could instantly manifest things, it would be complete chaos, and that like if like me stuck in traffic to I was having a rough day in traffic, super impatient. I was thinking, man, I wish that guy would just like fucking get out of my way or blow a tire and just get out of my way. But like if manifestation, if you're like if manifestations were almost instantaneous, like if we were able to control manifestations that fast, like could you imagine like without being able to control our mind and um being able to control it, like it would be complete chaos. And I loved how you said about these limitations and this responsibility. That it's almost like we're getting trained. I don't know if that's what you feel like, but for me, it feels like it's almost like we're getting trained by the universe on having more responsibility.
It it certainly appears that we are here to learn something. I could only hope that the things that we do learn in our life, that, you know, potentially we take them with us. You know, hopefully there's a reason for all of this, just in my personal opinion. Um, yeah, I hope whatever it is that we're learning is for a good reason, you know. But to your point about manifestation, because I was just itching the second the second I started thinking about instant manifestation, it's like, bro, this entire planet would be a skate park if I had control over this. So, you know.
Literally ramps everywhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And there'd be one handrail just circling the entire globe. It'd be like the ultimate challenge that never gets completed, you know. People try to grind the whole, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then what happens when it's not just you, but multiple people can start instantly manifesting? Like the whole system would literally collapse. I find it very interesting that if manifestations and or if manifestations seem to be getting unlocked easier for by humans, that it only gets unlocked as you learn control. Like through like meditation, mindfulness, and all these different things. As a byproduct of exploring consciousness, do you find in different routes of being able to be more in the moment and more mindful and more in control of your emotions and your thoughts? Because I know before my NDE, uh, I was not. I was not in control of my emotions. It was just I was in survival mode. But now, further down the road I get, the more I'm able to, I can watch my emotions and my emotional reactions and I can step away from them a little bit, and they don't necessarily control me as much. So I was wondering if you're experiencing that same sort of thing.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm not saying it happened instantly, to be honest. And at that point, you have to factor in maybe it was just me growing to be a little bit more emotionally control. So I don't know how much it played a factor in. But to be fair, I'm so aware that I'm going to cease to exist that I do find it very important to try to like understand people. You know, it's like I'm not going to agree with everyone, but like I don't want to die with hate in my heart or resentment or spite. Like it's, you know, the fact that I'm going to cease to exist, it makes me not really care about people's bullshit, to be honest. Like, you know, we don't need to be feuding. Problems are going to happen, right? But yeah, I try my absolute best to control my emotions, you know. Um, it's one of the best things you can do. I'm not saying be emotionless, but if you allow your emotions to control you, they will. And at that point, who's in control of your life? You know, is
Mhm.
my life gonna be controlled by some kid I went to high school with that has an opinion about me that I haven't talked to like this type of stuff? I actually find this stuff to be pretty insane. This is how people live because there's so much external influences acting upon us. I think that's a big thing too, is like, you know, I'm so aware that I'm going to cease to exist that I'm like, bro, I respect everyone I went to high school with. I wish them the best. I genuinely hope they have amazing lives. We don't talk. I don't need 45 more reasons to be on I won't even say the website because I hate giving free advertising, but you understand, like, there's so
Yeah.
many external forces acting upon us. And once I realized this, I was like, I'm not even in control of my life. The radio runs my life, the cell phone runs my life. I mean, it's crazy. You get into someone's car, what do you hear? Before they even say hi to you, what do you hear? You hear the radio, you either hear two or three radio hosts talking, you're like eavesdropping on conversations of people. People are familiar with more people they've never met than people they have met. And to me, this is crazy. I'm not even saying if it's good or bad. The technology is neutral, but you know, I worry about the future generations that are growing up like with cell phones in their hand at like 5 years old. I think they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I have a 14-year-old and a 9-year-old, and my partner has a 6-year-old. My 14-year-old calls my youngest there a dirty iPad kid, which which I found pretty funny because yeah, she's grown up with this technology. But my oldest, it's really interesting. She has no interest in like uh, that website that starts with a face,
I
or
don't even know if it has a face. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of faceless, yeah. Um, but yeah, it seems like this newer generation, like she doesn't even. I have like a new cell phone, and I have my old one. It's like an S21 and stuff. And I was like, "Do you want it?" She has like an S8 or something, so it's like a fairly old phone. And she's like, "No, I'm pretty happy with this one. It works good, and it seems like a lot of effort to transfer it over." And I was like, "Man." I was like, that's so weird. I know if I was when I was little or like a young kid, I would have jumped at the opportunity for new stuff. But no, no, they're quite content with the things they have. So they're starting to get away from rabid materialism and more about the connection, which I I really friggin' hope so. I really hope so. I'd love. So I know you're kind of, how should I put this? You love jellyfish.
I have a
Let's
fascination
talk.
with them
Yeah,
for
let's talk
sure.
about jellyfish.
Jellyfish, I'm not an expert on jellyfish, but jellyfish to me, they're so captivating because they like throw a wrench in this like once you think you know what consciousness is, it's like look at a jellyfish. They have no brain, no heart, no lungs. I don't even know if they have a nervous system. Like I don't even know if they know they're alive. And that's all I know about jellyfish, but then they're detecting light and they're reacting to stimuli. And so like where does this factor in? Is there like in between species? Like there's plants and then there's like sentient beings. Is there like an in between? I have no idea. Jellyfish are simply fascinating. That's all I could say about it.
It's interesting that you talk about this in between thing. As soon as you said that, it kind of made me think of mushrooms and the mycelium network, because it's like you say, there's no like central brain or nervous system or anything, but there's ample evidence now of it's almost like neurons and this distributed network of consciousness, and that I find it fascinating, these different organisms that aren't classical, but it's very interesting of where these things could go when we think about consciousness, because jellyfish are a great example. There's the mushrooms, trees. Even now there's studies about trees being able to know where their seedlings are, and then being able to send nutrients to their seedlings. Like that's pretty crazy to think about. um,
Wow.
I love dreams. I think uh, it taps into our subconscious, because our subconscious is actually running the show. We think we're running the show consciously, but most of the times it's like I'm really into Carl Jung, and yeah, he spent most of his life trying to figure out the subconscious through dreams. So, what's some significant dreams that do you dream every day? Are they like very vivid? And do you have any significant ones that really stand out to you?
Yeah, so I dream pretty much every day. Maybe not every single day, but most days of the week I have a very long, detailed, vivid dream. Um, I think one of the most interesting things about it is sometimes I'll go to a place in my dream that I've never been to on this planet before. And then maybe like months later, I'll have a completely separate dream in the same exact setting. And I now know how to navigate that land. Like I remember that I was there before, but it's not the same dream. I always
Mhm.
found that to be super weird. I love dreams. I have like crazy dreams. Um, honestly, I've gotten incepted a whole bunch of times. Like, you wake up in your apartment and then you think you're awake and then like more you look outside and you realize it's still dream world and then you wake up again. I've been like triple incepted on like occasions, that's not every day. um Dreams like that are super bugged out. Like when I wake up in my own apartment and then realize I'm still dreaming, I have like, for some reason, it's like a natural tendency to like start trying to wake myself up and I never can. And so like it turns into me just like trying to wake myself up. I don't know, but yeah, I have pretty wild dreams. I mean, for me to like, there's a couple that stand out, but like for me to tell the full dreams, I think that we would almost have to film like an entire dream episode because it would take up a significant amount of time.
I think, Dave, I think you're right. I think we'll have to have a whole interview and conversation just about dreams, because I love dreams. So I think maybe I've taken enough time of your day, and maybe we'll wrap this up. Can you let us know where, if people are interested, where they can find you, and a little bit about your channel?
Absolutely, yeah. So you can find me on YouTube at Our Sliver of Time. That's OUR. And you can find all of my other links there in the descriptions and everything like that. You can find me on Facebook. Primarily, I'm just posting on YouTube. So we're doing interviews with near-death experiencers such as yourself. We had, for everyone watching, we had Sean on the show. We had a lot of fun. Um, and yeah, I guess that's where they could find me.
Awesome. Thanks, man. It was lots of fun chatting with you again. And we'll keep in touch like usual. And thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And definitely check out Dave's channel. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you, man. And it's been an absolute honor. I have so much fun talking with you every time, and I just want to say I really appreciate you having me on today. It's been a pleasure. So thank you so much, and thank you also to everyone watching. So, but
Thank you.
thanks Sean the most. Sean is doing amazing things, so keep an eye on him as well.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. So are you. I really loved our interview, so hopefully everybody will check that out. I think it was lots of fun. So thanks so much, and we'll chat later. Bye, everyone.
Awesome.